What's up, guys? Back again for another pick ban preview, but this time it's going to be a much longer video because I have lots more to talk about with the season fully underway. I'm still going to be doing the normal pick ban recommendations, but with an added segment where I break down week one's main talking points and what they mean for the players, so that you guys can make more informed decisions on both champ select and the waiver wire pickups and drops. I'll include timestamps so that you guys can navigate the video to get the information you specifically need. And like always, please feel free to ask questions so that I can give you guys some help on decisions you need to make for week 2. I also want to take a second to thank you guys for all the kind comments on last week's video and how much you guys interacted, whether that be on the video itself or on Reddit. It means a lot to me to see that people are getting something from this, and I hope you guys enjoy this next episode. For the top lane, Jax and Cassante come into week 2 as the premier top laners for North America. There's lots of top laners being picked with champs like Olaf, Ornn, and Gnar receiving play, but your best odds are likely with one of Jax or Cassante. If you watched this week, you would have noticed the absolute dominance Fudge had on Cassante. Which you might be wondering, will Cassante be banned more now that teams are seeing the champ doing some ridiculous things here in NA and elsewhere in other regions? It's a tough one to call and we don't know what teams are thinking. But looking at Cassante bans in other regions, generally Cassante bans have been going down from week 1 to week 2, which could point to teams learning how to deal with the champ or figuring out counterpicks for it. The only caveat is what to do with Fudge. Fudge had a ridiculous score line of 14-2 and 25 on 2 games on the champion. It's a risk to go with Cassante again for Fudge because teams might see his play from last week and decide to target ban the champ away from him, so you might want to consider Jax or other options for him specifically. In the jungle, Sejuani has shot up the list and has become the most picked jungler in North America. She'll be the safest pick coming into week 2. Seems like NA teams aren't banning her as much as other regions, which was my main worry for her before week 1. Wukong still remains a solid option, being picked 4 times and only receiving 1 ban. For the mid lane, Sylas and Azir are solid picks for week 2. Continue to stay away from Ryze, he's banned way too much to warrant a pick or ban in fantasy. In ADC, surprisingly the most picked ADC was Varus. Typically it uses a poke ADC alongside a support like Heimerdinger. Zeri continues to be a decent option, with Sivir and Ezreal also receiving a bit of play. ADC is pretty open as Lucian was picked 3 times with ban 7, so you can justify picking any one of the ADCs seen on screen. For support, LCS teams have let Ashe through more compared to her ban rates over in other regions, so she's definitely an option going into this week. Safest options are still going to be Lulu and Nami because of their synergy with Zeri and Lucian respectively, plus they're rarely ever banned. Moving on from my champ select recommendations, this is going to be a section where I talk about what happened in week 1 and my opinions on a couple sets of players that will probably be the most looked at for waiver wire pickups and drops. Both CLG and TSM jumped up to 2-0 starts with their players among the top performers in fantasy last week. It really shows you why you should be prioritizing players on winning teams rather than searching for better individual players. It's really hard for someone to have a good KDA or get any of the team bonus points when the team is struggling. This gives me a good opportunity to talk about how important bonus points are for your fantasy team. Here's a table of the bonus points in which you see that winning teams tend to get more of the bonus points. You'll see how teams like TSM and FlyQuest got upwards of 15 bonus points for each of their players, which in default scoring equals 5 kills, which isn't a joke. That can easily win or lose you a fantasy week, which comes down to the general rule. You want to pick the players on winning teams, not necessarily who's better individually. So here's the question. Can TSM and CLG keep up the winning forms? Likely not. There's a reason why both of these teams didn't have high expectations, but if I had to choose between CLG or TSM players, I'd lean TSM. And to show you why, we'll do a little more digging. CLG's game against Dignitas was generally impressive. The game was a very controlled stomp from CLG, however Dignitas has gotten out to a horrendous start, getting stomped even harder in their game versus FlyQuest, with their team combining for a measly 50.82 fantasy points. For context, 20 players individually had more than that on the week. CLG's second game against EG is what worries me. EG was able to get out to a commanding lead, and CLG ended up winning more because EG gave CLG exactly what they wanted in allowing them to teamfight with their Sivir comp. Not trying to take anything away from CLG because it was a great week for them, but the win over EG is likely more due to EG screw up than them being better than EG. TSM's play seems a lot more decisive this year, and the general sense that I get from their play is that all 5 players are on the same page, at least for the 2 games I've seen from them. Their game plan for Game 1 was very clear in that they wanted to use the Elise and Talia to constantly put pressure on ITF's Draven lane. They didn't get the lead that they wanted, but cleaner mechanical play, which can be fixed, could have seen them get a lot more. And all these players are talented mechanically, and mistakes happen. But it's much easier to fix where to aim the Elise cocoon than players misunderstanding what their jobs are. TSM's teamfighting in both games was a clear strength, and they stayed together as a solid unit, with good target selection from their damage dealers and awareness of their supportive champs on how best to enable and protect their damage dealers. In their game against Liquid, they made a couple of good decisions to prolong the lane phase so that their comp, centered around Ornn, Graves, and Azir, can outscale TL. A good example is this play where Maple teleports up to the lane against Summit. This does two things. Solo on Ornn gets to lane relatively uncontested, giving him more time to get to a point where he outscales Gnar and can start to give out Ornn items. This also screws over Summit, who's in a position where he needs to push advantages as he knows that his comp doesn't scale as well as TSM's. Maple on Azir is much harder for Gnar to punish, and when Summit tries to gain advantages over Maple, he's scooped into the turret and killed, with a nice follow-up arrow by Shime cross-map. A couple minutes later, TL go for a 2v2 fight, but are punished by Maple TPing up to kill Summit, as well as TSM bringing their bot lane up to prevent any follow-up kills and to get out safely. My basic point from all of this is that TSM is making proactive plays to get their win over a talented team TL, whereas CLG benefited from EG's mistakes. Realistically, it's 2 games worth of play, so you can't say anything definitively, but I think it's a good idea to look at the games and make observations that can help you make your decisions.
Holy fuck, TL 102. PO6 retired. Who the fuck is this Mark guy? Summit's washed.
Chill out. Every team has bad weeks, and hopefully I can show you why you shouldn't be dropping TL players, and you shouldn't be panicking too much if you own them. What's nice about their games last week is they both went about the same. TL drafted early game comp center around snowballing their bot lane. Against FlyQuest, they weren't able to find the angles to snowball their lanes, and they lost pretty handily because of it. So if you're looking at the game score of 16-5, don't worry. Games where the early game team fails to find their leads tend to look like this. The early game team can't find leads, so they just have to go for fight after fight, throwing themselves at the enemy team in hopes of them screwing up and finding a miracle team fight that wins the game for them. In the game versus TSM, they were able to find some laning advantages where Eon and Core JJ got kills on TSM's bot lane. TL also had a few unfortunate mechanical misplays, where if Core JJ can land the bubble a little earlier, they probably get more from their dive and out to a bigger lead. TL was even able to find a teamfight through Harry's flank on Akali, impressive seeing as their comp is much harder to teamfight with compared to TSM's. I really don't think that TL will continue this poor form, and a week against GGS and IMT is probably just what they need to get back to their winning ways and get some confidence. For anyone who may own TL players in Fantasy, just sit and wait, give it another week, and let them figure this out. Now, I don't want to completely dunk on Dignitas, but I'm going to dunk on Dignitas. These guys look lost at the moment. Where I can find redeemable qualities of TL's losses, it's really hard to find anything from them. And with big names like Armut, Santorin, and Jensen, chances are that some of you own these players. My advice is act early, and I'll show you why being aggressive in these situations is a good idea. So that I can give you the best advice for these players, feel free to comment your situation and the players you're considering down below and I'll respond. When you do this, just let me know who's owned and who's on the waiver wire so I don't have to guess. Just as an example, let's say you're a Jensen owner in a 6-man league. Bjergsen, Jojo, Vikla, Deplex, Harry, and Jensen are all, and with Maple and Palafox being on the wire. If you were to drop Jensen for one of Maple or Palafox, the owners of Bjerg, Jojo, Vikla, Deplex, and Harry aren't likely going to swap their mid laner out for Jensen. So if for some reason Dignitas starts performing better, chances are that Jensen's still going to be there for you to use. My basic point is that if you're on the bottom end of a roll, play aggressively. You can just pick up and drop that roll as much as you see fit, and use the player who's in form. Also, seeing as how there's lots of new faces in the league, I'm going to make a quick undroppable list so that you guys don't make a super costly mistake. This can obviously change depending on how the teams do. If TL are magically 0-9 in the next couple of weeks, maybe start looking around other options, but I doubt that's going to happen. If you own other players on TL, 100 Thieves, EG, FlyQuest, or C9, don't think about dropping them for the next couple weeks. These 5 teams have the most expectations on them for a reason. They all have high ceilings, and you can make a convincing argument for any one of them to win the split. So you shouldn't overreact after one bad week from any of these players. Other teams like TSM, CLG, and Dignitas are more or less unknowns whether they'll be sustainably good, so you don't need to show too much loyalty to these players if they start to dip. If you got this far, thanks for watching all the way through. Hopefully you were able to pull something from this to help you win your week. All my links are down below if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, Twitch. I stream me and my friends playing games on there. Feel free to pop in and ask me stuff. I'm always down to talk about the LCS. I also have my Medium linked, which is just another option for you guys if you prefer my content in written form. Thanks again for all the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.